liberty, the spirit of Paris. They say all the great cities have their knees in the water. To arrive in the center of Paris by river is surely one of the most exciting things I've ever done. Some songsters would have it that Eiffel is awful, but I love it. It was put up for the Paris exhibition a century ago as a temporary example of French engineering skills. It's still here. These floating palaces, the Bateau Mouche, sweep up and down the Seine, showing the city at its best. By some miracle, there was a space to moor under the Pont des Arts, a footbridge that's been a rendezvous for lovers for centuries. Putting the eye of the rope over the bollard made me realize that we'd finally arrived in this queen of cities. In the morning, we saw we were not the only people who spent the night under the bridge. He'd been born in Strasbourg, the eldest of 8 children. After his father had disappeared, the responsibility for the family became his. This was too much for him, so he took to the road. He'd been living rough for the last 8 years, taking work unloading supermarket vans. It was, he said, a life he enjoyed. He met girls, ate well, drank well, and had a good laugh. The idea of factory work appalled him. He was, he said, a born traveller. One of the most important things, he said, was to keep looking smart, to stay out of the clutches of the police. In the end, I asked him why he didn't just take a room somewhere. He simply said, where would he ever wake up to a view like this? They last for about 12 years, living rough, before the bronchitis gets them. Paris is glorious in the last days of spring.
Sous le ciel de Paris s'envole une chanson. Elle est née d'aujourd'hui dans le cœur d'un garçon. Sous le ciel de Paris marchent des amoureux. Leur bonheur se construit sur un air fait pour eux. Sous le pont de musiciens, quelques badauds, puis des gens par milliers. Sous le ciel de Paris, jusqu'au soir vont chanter l'hymne d'un peuple épris de sa vieille cité. Près de Notre-Dame, parfois couvert de rames. Oui, mais à Paname, tout peut s'arranger. Quelques rayons du ciel d'été, l'accordéon d'un marinier, et l'espoir fleurit au cœur de Paris. Sous le ciel de Paris coule un fleuve joyeux. Il endort dans la nuit les clochards et les gueux. Sous le ciel de Paris, les oiseaux du bon Dieu viennent du monde entier pour bavarder entre eux. Et le ciel de Paris a son secret pour lui. Depuis 20 siècles, il est épris de notre île Saint-Louis. Quand elle lui sourit, il met son habit bleu. Quand il pleut sur Paris, c'est qu'il est malheureux. Quand il est trop jaloux de ses millions d'amants, il fait gronder sur nous son tonnerre éclatant. Mais le ciel de Paris n'est pas longtemps cruel, oh non. Pour se faire pardonner, il offre un arc-en-ciel.
When I came here for the first time as a young man, I remember thinking it was one of the loneliest cities I'd ever been to. Sometimes I like to recapture those early impressions, knowing where I can find the antidotes nowadays. They're serviettes for the regulars. See, the serviettes like that. Yeah, so if you come here every day, you start at the bottom and you get up to number one. That's the best customer. Like a lot of cheap restaurants, you have to be here at 12 sharp to eat with the locals. Otherwise, you will find yourself fighting for space with the out-of-towners.
What is that? What is it?
It's raw vegetables, you know, all cut up. It's quite delicious, actually.
Oh, let's try that.
Easy when you set. The Rue Champollion. There are more cinemas in this little street than anywhere I know, but then there are more cinemas in Paris than anywhere else. You can be sure that one of your old favourites will be running somewhere in the city. Back on the Leo, an old friend remembered working on the film as an assistant director.
Was made from a thoroughly unsuccessful play on the New York stage, which lasted about 10 minutes, something called everybody comes to Rick's, which was the name of the character that Bogart played and the name of his place in the feature. And I thought one of the more interesting things that people always remark upon it being such a scenic background and gave you so much flavor of the era, and the fact was no part of the film was ever made outside the studio, including the streets of what represented to be Casablanca, the streets of Paris, and moreover, if you recall, one of the more famous scenes in the picture is the tag, the very end of the picture, where Claude Rains and Humphrey Bogart are in an airport waving goodbye to Ingrid Bergman and Paul Henreid. And this was actually all on a stage with a cutout airplane and with enough fog so the audience could be thoroughly confused and not realize it was a stage set. And I was very proud of myself because I had the idea to give it a little perspective. We hired a bunch of dwarfs to be apparently loading the plane in the background, and it lent an air of realism. Warner Brothers had a stock company at that time, so people like Claude Rains, he really didn't want to do the role, but he was under contract to the studio and was do that or else. And Bogey was certainly not happy with it. He was the second or third choice, and he had just gotten off, I guess, a certain form of punishment, because also for my sins I'd written a number of screenplays, all B pictures. And one of them was called The Return of Dr. X. And Jack Warner, being particularly incensed at Bogart at the moment, had decided he would punish him by making him Dr. X. So I think he rather blamed me afterwards for the casting.
There are other ways of travelling through Europe, like this British band that sing for their supper from city to city. There are some things you can't get on a barge, like Lost. We had some navigational aids to begin with. We knew this was the opera. But the tide was definitely against us.
That's it. 2 hours, I think. At least. I don't believe it.
We were trying to get across Montmartre to the Village du Vin, a huge wine depot where I wanted to stock up for the rest of the journey. One landmark it was hard to miss. Towering over Paris, the Sacré-Cœur. Follow the tram lines, they said, to find the barrel man. These barrels are made from seasoned oak. It's a skilled profession. We're looking for something slightly smaller than his usual stock in trade. The barrel we wanted was going to set us back about 300 francs or £30.
Oh, il faut compter 300 francs. Oui. Okay. You think we can manage this, right? I feel like a while about that. It's not even. I could say we took well
Ray and I did a great deal of tasting before we stumbled on this cheeky little vintage from Bordeaux. Back at the Leo, Ray displayed his waterman skills by tying a little used knot, the barrel hitch. You can't get away from the traffic police anywhere. On the Seine, the traffic is strictly controlled. Upstream traffic alternates with downstream traffic every 20 minutes. We were in the wrong 20 minutes. That's why the police were hurrying us along.
You've got to go over that side now.
In trouble again. This time we're stopped for stopping.
Et là-bas, interdit. Excusez-moi. Bon, prise de vue, arrêt, stop, tout ça, interdit. Il n'y a pas de tête. Jamais encore. Never again, seriously. Et amarré contre les piles de pont là, comme le poids là-bas. Ah, au service. You're not allowed to do. Mais c'est possible d'amarrer pour tourner ici. Ici, vers peut-être tourner là. Pour aller monter au-dessus et attendre. Voilà.
On the whole, we felt the police were getting altogether too friendly. Rather than being buffeted about from bank to bank, I decided to take the Leo out of the Seine for a few days and wander around the canals that penetrate the heart of the old city, away from the tourists. Hanging out and wandering about is typical of the French to have a better word for it. Flâner. And that's what we meant to do. This tunnel runs right under the site of the Bastille prison. This tunnel is like an initiation, a rite of passage between the Paris of the glossy brochure and the real city. Coming out into the warm spring sunshine again, I decided to moor up for a few days in this quiet quartier and visit a few friends, and perhaps meet Fifi or Mimi, those mythical French girls that every man hopes to find whilst he's in Paris. Parisian film buffs have made the city preserve this building, Hotel du Nord, although the film was shot in a studio.